watching the replay. And if you watch the replay, just put replay in the comments and offer any thoughts on what we're going to talk about today. Today, we are going to head into a discussion about feedback. And part of that is because of some of the things I've been hearing and just some things we talked about last week. And the way I put it in my email that went out this week was, have you shared with them? Have you shared this with them? Because so many times what I'm hearing from friends and relatives, coworkers that I worked with in the past, managers that I've had in the past, senior leaders, and even CEOs, they're sharing challenging feedback with me about someone on their team, one of their managers, one of their leaders, one of their, you know, somebody they're working with, and it's about someone else. And when I ask them in the conversation if they've had a conversation with that person, the answer is most often no. Or it goes something like, well, not really. Well, we kind of talked about it, sort of, or, "Oh my god, no." People some people are like, "Absolutely not, no." And some people will say, "I could never do that." I and then I had another person who was a consultant who had some pretty strong opinions about how the manager of our team was working. She was a peer of mine on a project. And when I said, "Why don't you share this with him?" She's like, "His personal development is not my problem." And I'm like, "You're having a problem with him. You're frustrated, you're angry, you're disappointed, you've got all these emotions. Maybe sharing with him how some of the ways he's leading, what the impact that that's having on the team, that you're seeing that it's having on the team and that it's having on you." And she's like, "That's not my job. That's not what I was hired to do." And in some ways, I get that as a consultant. And what if that person wasn't really aware of the impact they were having? What if they didn't know? And so many people, there's another situation that someone I know is in, and there's a new manager, and they've been on the job for 30 days, and they're not doing everything that they need to be doing. And when I asked if expectations were clear, they said, "Well, not explicitly." And so that's number 1. If expectations aren't clear, you can't expect someone to actually do the work you want them to do if it's not clear to them what that work is. And so what they had planned to do was to skirt around the issue and to talk to actually take part of the job away from them so that they could control some of the work that was being done and who was doing the work. That was part of the problem, was this new leader was delegating all of the work to one of the team members. And so their manager was gonna take over all of the work and divvy up the work to get around this. And I was just flabbergasted that they wouldn't actually give direct, honest, candid feedback to this manager 30 days on the job. They wanna one of that their manager was considering letting them go. They're in the probationary period. They don't need to have cause. That's in their, that's part of the deal. And I'm like, give him the feedback. Maybe he just doesn't understand that this is part of the situation that needs to happen, because with things being the way they are now, it's not as busy as it will be, later when their busy season comes around. They won't be able to operate this way. They won't be able to delegate everything to someone else. I was just really flabbergasted. And so why are so many people afraid or unwilling to provide feedback? One, they're feedback that they've provided in the past, whether it's to the person they're providing feedback to or not, has been completely ignored, or it was scoffed at, or it was, they were told that's not true, there's no way, blah, 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 that it was negated and it was defended. And so people, after a while, if this happens more than once, or even if it only happens once, sometimes this will happen, um, people will say, well, it's just not worth it. Some people will not provide feedback because of fear of retribution. They are afraid that if they provide feedback, especially upward feedback to a manager, to a senior leader, that it will damage their career. It will prevent them from being promoted. They'll not get the good projects to work on, so to speak. So that's the second thing. The first one is that previous feedback was defended, ignored, or scoffed at, fear of retribution. Some people are just so uncomfortable sharing something that isn't 100% positive. If they're not providing, "Oh, you're doing great, just keep doing what you're doing." That's what one woman I was talking to said, that that used to be the feedback that she would get from her manager all the time. "Just keep doing what you're doing." We all have the opportunity to learn and grow, every single one of us. Even if someone is doing a great job, how can you providing them with ways that they can challenge themselves differently, grow. All of us, we are organic beings. We need to be growing all the time. The third reason why someone, or this is the fourth, I think I'm out of whack here. Yes, the fourth. The fourth reason that some people don't is just a lack of psychological safety. There is, either a bully or someone who, as I talk about, if your MVP is an ASS, if there's someone who is a jerk about things and they don't feel safe, if they don't feel like their voice is heard, if they don't feel like their voice is valued, they're not going to provide feedback and they're not going to be honest in their feedback. In fact, that's the whole thing around cordial hypocrisy, which is when people will provide positive feedback in the room, like, to someone, and then outside the room, they're like, oh, they'll talk negatively and share negatively, or they will agree to a decision or a project or a process in the room, and outside the room, they're like, that's ridiculous. I don't know why we're doing that. And that's cordial hypocrisy. And they do that often out of fear or out of loyalty. Another reason people don't provide feedback is fear of conflict. And without trust, you cannot have healthy conflict and healthy debate. And healthy conflict and healthy debate are really different than providing constructive feedback. Constructive feedback offers people information about potentially how they're doing something, the way, that's usually mostly what it's about. And so many people are used to getting feedback that talk about who they are and not what they did. And understanding the feedback is about what is the impact of that? What is the impact of what you've done or what you haven't done on other people, on the project, on the outcomes, on the results that you're trying to create in an organization? And then the last reason a lot of people don't provide feedback is that there is no clear process. There's no procedure, there's no standard operating procedure. And it's interesting how people will dance around issues and dance around challenges and even let people go and try to manufacture reasons for letting people go, setting people up for failure because of their unwillingness to provide feedback. And for a long time, I never even realized how lucky I was that when I worked for one of the organizations I worked for, how that feedback mechanism that we had in that organization was so powerful. We set annual goals. We had weekly meetings with our manager, and with some managers, it was biweekly. It was every other week. And we looked at and talked about where are you on those goals? And it was those the annual goals were broken down into quarterly goals. And then every quarter we actually did like a mini review. And we had to go over kind of what was our progress, what's going well, what's not going well, where do we need resources, where do we need help. And then at the end of the year, and all of this feedback included at the quarterly level and the annual level, included feedback from people we were working with, our peers, people who reported to us, people who maybe if we were a project leader or working on a project, people who were stakeholders of the project. It included feedback from other people so that we could understand how other people were seeing us and how we were doing the work that we were doing. So I really would love to hear in the comments what your experience has been with feedback, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Um, I've had feedback early in my career that I took and, nearly sent me to tears because people were very offensive. People got very personal. They got very loud. They were somewhat rude. And oftentimes I was really guided to just take it. And I learned over time how to not take it all personally and how to look at the truth of the situation because there's always some level of truth in that situation. And so, what I want to do is, I want to offer you just three things that you can do. If you do not have a great culture of feedback in your organization, I'm going to offer you three things that you can do to get started. The first one is lead by example. If you are a leader in an organization, what you want to do is demonstrate how willing you are to receive feedback from your team and to provide feedback, and that you want to set the tone for the team. You want to be able to give them feedback and you want to be able to receive feedback. So actively seek feedback from your team in your one-on-ones. First of all, if you're not doing one-on-ones, for the love of God, please start doing one-on-ones with your team and really openly discuss, if you seek feedback ask them for feedback, ask them, what their thoughts are about how you're leading, what the priorities are, how you're providing guidance to the team. You could provide a number of different questions that you could ask them to be more specific about feedback. Maybe there's an initiative you've been working on for the past month and how you've been leading that initiative with your team. And then be open about how you're implementing their suggestions. And if you don't feel that you can implement any of their suggestions or even, one or two of their suggestions you don't feel are appropriate for you to implement, share with them why. Don't just say, "Oh, I'm not doing that." There's no way. You want to show that you value constructive criticism, that you value that you're open to making changes. There is more, as the saying goes, there's more than one way to skin the cat. And it's interesting. I had an aunt who, and this was really with sh us each dealing with our significant other, and she says, "Dottie, you and we're here, and when we see a situation or a problem, we go, 'Oh, this is the solution.' We just like, boom, we can see it. We notice it, we realize it, we're like, 'Okay, this is where we're going.'" And our partners are very similar. She's not around anymore, but her partner is, and my partner still is, my significant other, my husband. And she said, "Our guys, here's how they do it. They go, well, maybe this, maybe not. Well, this could work. And let me think about this a little bit more. And you know what? Let's do this." And it's different than what we saw. Doesn't mean it's wrong. It is different, and it likely will get us to the same place, maybe down a different path, and it takes them a little bit longer, and it takes them potentially to a different place, and that is so critical, is try out some of their suggestions, see how it works. It may be a little uncomfortable at first because it's not how you would have done things, and see if it is having a different impact on your team. So that's first, lead by example. The second one is establish structured feedback mechanisms. So, as I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons people don't provide feedback is that there is no structure for them. So, first, make sure that you're doing regular one on one meetings and that you are preparing for them and not just walking in going, okay, what are we talking about? And that you've thought about, you've been observing things that are going on with the team. You've been observing how they're interacting. You've been observing the results they're producing and take notes throughout the week. Take notes so that you can share with them things that are specific to them and how they're working and what they're producing. And see if you can also incorporate it into some of your team meetings. As people get used to feedback, see if you can incorporate it into a session like, okay, what and even use something like an after action review as a way to provide feedback and do it. You can do it anonymously if people aren't comfortable at first. Use post-it notes and and make sure all the post-it notes are the same color, use all the same colored markers and have everybody just submit them to you, mix them all up, and then put them up and say, okay, and always start out with what went well, what didn't go well, and then what do we need to do differently. After action reviews are a great way to start incorporating feedback and really make sure. And if people aren't contributing, really say, okay, come on, there's got to be something we didn't do right. There's got to be some opportunity for improvement and really communicate the purpose of these is for improving the team dynamics, improving performance, improving the results that you're producing as a team, as an organization. And you want to really encourage people to be specific in their feedback, make it actionable, and to be constructive. Just because you're providing feedback that this didn't work, what you did is having a really negative impact on the team, that doesn't mean it has to be personal or make it about who they are. It's about what they did, not who they are as a person, how they're behaving. Make it about the behavior and make sure it's respectful and that it's given in a respectful way. Because I will tell you, when I was in the room and I had people yelling at me, and I had multiple people yelling at me, it doesn't go well because what it does is it sets us up for fight, flight, or freeze. It sets us up to have to be defensive. And if possible, the third thing that I want to provide, so the first one was lead by example. Second one was establish some structure. And if you can, if you have an HR team, work with your HR team to do that and make sure you're following it. I know someone who for the past year and a half had said that they were gonna provide reviews, and out of, like, 15 people, they'd done 3 reviews in a year and a half, and they don't do regular one-on-ones. And actually, the one-on-ones that they do, I think they do regular one-on-ones, and the feedback is not being actioned on. So it's not being given in a way that is clarifying the importance of changing behaviors and the importance of shifting how things are being done. And so sometimes you need training. And so partnering with either an outside person, an outside organization, partnering with your HR team is to recognize that providing and receiving feedback may be very challenging for some people. They might not be used to it. And if it's a new practice in the organization, you're going to have to provide some training. And so you want to provide training around communication and how to communicate clearly and active listening. And what did somebody say? Even more than active listening, fertile listening. Kylie Peters shared this. Fertile, I think was it Kylie Peters or Kelly, I can't remember her last name. 2 speakers I saw at a Young Guns event recently, and both of them one of the 2 of them, and I apologize that I'm not crediting the right person for this, but fertile. So be fertile ground when you're listening, not don't just actively listen. I mean, first you have to teach people active listening so that they're not, immediately trying to think of what they're gonna say next, that they're really listening. And think of it that you are fertile soil what this person is sharing. So if you're listening, really help them understand and know how to be a fertile ground for listening, and how to provide constructive feedback. Then help to equip them to communicate what they're thinking and their opinions effectively, and to not do it in a blaming manner, to not do it in a victimy way, to really help them to navigate conversations. Because our natural tendency, our brain, when we hear something that's not positive about what we've done, is to get defensive, fight, flight, or freeze. We're either going to fight, we're gonna, shut down. We're gonna, I had a guy on a call recently, just crossed his arms and kind of sat back, and he was taking things personally about the feedback that was being given by the CEO on the team. And you could, I know several other coaches who coach on how to provide feedback, that do leadership development kinds of coaching. Give them some coaching. If you have individuals who would like coaching, provide them a mentor, provide them resources that encourage that healthy communication, and that really looks at how can we foster healthy debate, which absolutely starts with trust. And by starting here with these three things: lead by example, create that structure for feedback, and provide training and support, then this is going to actually promote transparency rather than people keeping everything inside and people not being willing to or feeling safe with providing feedback. And this is going to build trust. When you provide constructive feedback and when you ask for and accept constructive feedback, this is going to actually create trust on your team, and it's going to create the foundation for continuous improvement. And this will both improve the productivity and performance in your team, and also create a much more collaborative environment, and create that foundation for healthy conflict. I've talked about this in the past, that we have to have trust on our teams. And trust lays the foundation for us for many things in an organization. And one of them is so that we can have healthy debate, so that everyone's voice is heard. And it's only then that everyone is going to commit 100% to whatever it is that you're working on. Even if it's I'm going to agree to disagree, and I'm going to support the decision. Because that's the only thing that leads to accountability. When you can have trust, healthy conflict, healthy debate, commitment, then you can get to accountability. So I hope this helps. Please, in your organizations, if you have questions, I actually have a couple of friends who have courses specifically on providing feedback. I do workshops on it. I don't have like a lengthy course on it. I do coaching for leaders on how to build that habit of feedback, to help their team build that habit of feedback. I can provide workshops for you. I can do coaching for your organization. So please reach out if you have any questions, or if you'd like to start some sessions with your team on establishing that culture of healthy feedback. Look forward to talking to you next week.